What is up? Welcome back to Frickin' Awesome Cars. I'm here performing the first round of maintenance on my 2004 BMW Z4. It is the E85 generation with the M54 motor, and it is a 3-liter. Bought this bad boy when she had about 41,000 miles, and she's now at 45K. So, looking at the old service history, today we're going to be performing an oil change, a brake fluid flush, replacing the engine and in-cabin air filters, as well as replacing those drive belts. So I'm just going to give a little walkthrough, a little guide for those of you who are curious on what maintaining a BMW looks like. So let's get started. Getting started with the parts that I bought for everything that I'm doing to the BMW today. Bought all my parts off of SCP Euro. SCP Euro is a website that provides parts for BMWs, Audis, and Volkswagens from the suppliers that all those brands get them. So they just don't have the BMW or the Volkswagen logo on them, but they are essentially the same or to the same standard that BMW uses. So I'll throw that link down in the description if you're interested in using that website to order your BMW parts. Moving with the oil that I chose, choosing Liqui Moly 5W30 synthetic motor oil. 7 quarts of it is what the vehicle calls for, or more rather 6.9. So got 7 quarts of it just to be safe, and should be good to go. I'm also using a EPR and MOA kit from BG. I use these on all the vehicles that I perform oil changes on, as it just removes old gunk out of the motor and provides some extra oil additives that helps motors run longer for performance wise. Moving on, got some genuine BMW .4 brake fluid for the brake fluid flush. 36 ounces is what I'm using to flush the system. Should be all good, and it is what our BG pressurized brake fluid exchanger uses. So again, this is not available to everybody. However, if you do have this, or somebody does have this, it is very useful for flushing brake fluid, and makes the process a lot easier, as you do not have to bleed all the brake calipers. If you are looking for a guide on bleeding your brake fluid that does not use a pressure flusher, it's pretty simple. You just undo the bleeder valve on your caliper and let it drain a little bit, as you have new fluid being poured into your reservoir, and then proceeding to pump your brake pedal to squeeze all the air to the top and bleed it until fluid starts coming out again. A little bit of a timely process, so just for time's sake, I'm going to be using this bad boy today. Moving on, we got a Bosch cabin air filter, a MAN engine air filter, a MAN oil filter, and some Continental drive belts. So getting started, I also have a 2-post lift, which does make this a little easier. However, floor jacks and jack stands will be suitable. So just showing you the jack points. On the front, it's going to be that pinch weld right there. And on the rear, might be a little difficult to see. However, it's going to be a little cutout in the body panel with frame poking out, so that's where you're going to place your pad or your jack stand, and that should be suitable to support the weight of the vehicle. I've gone ahead and ran the EPR already. You just put it in your oil fill cap and let the vehicle run for 10 minutes, and that will circulate the EPR treatment throughout the motor and will help remove gunk when we drain out that old engine oil. So getting started with one of the easy items, we're going to start with the engine air filter. It's located right in this big box that connects to the intake manifold, and just some clips that we got to undo. So all you have to do is just flip this little clip up, and that's a little anchor right there. So you got one more clip right down there, and then I believe we have 2 around the back here. So once you undo all of those and you swivel all the metal grabber arms out of the way, this guy will just lift up like that, and there's your engine air filter. So got my new engine air filter, and we're just going to do the reverse process of what we did, of just lifting that lid, placing in the new engine air filter, and lining this lid back up. Sorry, fast forwarded a little bit just because I was struggling to do that with one hand. But after we get that lid back placed in properly, we're just going to redo all of our clips just like that, and got this little guy right there, and boom. So now once you got all 4 of those clips snug back down, just make sure that that is secure, and there's your engine air filter replaced. Alrighty, so moving on to the cabin air filter. To get access to this guy, all you got to do is take a Phillips head screwdriver and remove these 2 Phillips screws from right there. and right there. And you're going to try and pull down on this guy, and it's not going to come down all the way. That is because there is a secret little latch right there. So this guy will swivel, and it's just a little fern tree clip that'll go into that hole. So you're just going to take a screwdriver or something to pry. You're going to pry this little clip out and swing it down, and that'll be able to allow you to pull down this under tray to the clearance level that we need. Now, coming to remove your cabin filter. After you have this down under tray pulled down, you can see your air box. If you can see, if you kind of push some of these wires out of the way, you will be able to see a little tab up top right there. You're just going to push down on that, and that will, with a little bit of down pressure, will release your cabin filter door. After you have your door removed, so it takes a little bit of finagling, but you'll just pull down and kind of wiggle it out as these tabs click into the bottom of the air box. But now, maybe a little difficult to see, but you can see your air filter poking out here. And all we're gonna do is drop this. It takes a little bit of finagling, but you're just gonna give it some light pressure, kind of bend it out of the way of your wires, and just pull it down. Just like that, you have your old cabin air filter removed. Now, after your old cabin air filter is removed, depending on how dirty it is, there will be some dirt or debris from the outside that spills. Mine particularly had a lot of leaves, so I guess whoever owned this vehicle before me, like driving in forests, or wherever leaves are, and a lot spilt out onto that under tray, so I just took a shop vac or any sort of vacuum with a hose just to vacuum up some of that dirt and debris that spill out of that air box. But we are now ready to install our new cabin air filter. So now installing our new cabin air filter, have it out of the package from Bosch. As you can see, the airflow is pointing downwards. So if you are looking at this, the air is going to be coming from top to bottom. So you want to keep it that way. So for the BMW Z4, the airflow comes from the front of the vehicle and comes back into the cabin, which is standard on most vehicles. However, there are some air boxes with different orientations. So when you're installing your cabin air filter, you're going to want to make sure that it's oriented with this airflow arrow pointing backwards, or with the Bosch, bottom of the Bosch logo pointing towards the back of your seats. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw this air filter in there. It's a little difficult filming while doing this, but you just take two hands on both sides and just kind of line it up with the door. Maybe a little bit of persuasion and some light bending / squeezing just to get it up in there, but I will come back to you after we got this installed. Alrighty, we are back. Got the cabin air filter. Yeah, it was giving me a little trouble with that wire right there. Not exactly sure what that is, but it was getting caught on it, so just give plenty of clearance when you're doing that. Maybe easier in your preference to not deal with this under tray. You can take those two 10 mils, I believe they're 10 mil bolts, out of this little computer module, just with a screwdriver or something, and remove this little light, whether it's the plug or the actual whole light. And you can remove this under tray, just to give you a little more clearance. However, with about 5 minutes of my time and a little bit of persuasion of lining it up, I was able to get it to slide in there. So now we're just going to reinstall the door and reinstall everything in a previous order that was mentioned. Alrighty, we are now all buttoned up. Just got those screws back in place, and take your time, don't feel in a rush. Sometimes you need to attempt things a couple times, or just kind of pull it back down a little bit and push it back up just to get all the wires to sit properly. But with it only being 2 screws and 1 little fern tree clip, not too bad overall. Next, let's move on to hooking up. Alrighty, we are here setting up the brake fluid flush machine. Went ahead and filled my reservoir with the new BMW brake fluid. As you can see, the color of it is a very bright, almost urine colored yellow. And my brake fluid is definitely due as we unscrew my cap. Very black, very dark, not very good. So it's good that we're getting this fluid flush. After removing that fluid reservoir cap, gonna go ahead and grab your brake fluid adapter for the machine. You're just gonna screw that on there. And now we're gonna take our pump hose, which is pumping the new fluid from the reservoir into the system. And we're going to go ahead and attach it. So went ahead and attached that hose, and we're going to open our valve to the open position. Turn our pressure up to about 20-25 psi. I don't want too much. Around there should be good. Push it in to lock it in. And now we're all set up to get that new brake fluid flush as soon as we raise the vehicle. Also recommends using some sort of fender protector or cover when you're flushing your brake fluid in any capacity, even rags, just to protect your paint and bodywork, as brake fluid is very corrosive and will eat away paint super quickly. So just making sure that your bodywork is protected will be super helpful, and you'll thank it later when your paint is not completely eaten away and atomized. Alrighty, went ahead and raised the vehicle, getting ready to do the brake fluid flush. On some BMW models, you have a brake pad wear sensor. This is basically a wire that goes from your brake pad that will contact your rotor when the brake pad gets too thin and send an electrical signal to the computer that tells you, hey, your brake pads are low, you need to replace them. However, for this bleeder valve, or some of the bleeder valves on the vehicle, your wire is in the way of the bleeder valve bolt to open it and close it for when you're flushing it. So you just have maybe a little difficult to see, but this wire and a little rubber grommet there, and you'll just pull that out just to give you a little more clearance, and then you'll uncap this guy, and that will allow this to slide off and give you access to that brake bleeder valve. As you can see, just went ahead and undid it, so just pop that off with a screwdriver, pocket screwdriver, or something to pry on, and it just lifts off just like that. Gives you plenty of access for your bleeder valve. And you're going to repeat this process on all 4 of the calipers. Alrighty, so the tool that we're going to need for this brake fluid flush for the bleeder valves, it's going to be a 9mm wrench, kind of an odd size, so you may have to go purchase one, but this will be the size for your brake bleeder valves. We're now going to come to our machine and turn it on. Should start making a pumping sound, however ours is acting up right now. And here we go, should be making this pumping sound, and we're just going to take this return line and head over to the passenger rear corner of the vehicle. Now we're here on the passenger rear. When you're performing a brake fluid flush of any sort, you're always going to want to start with your passenger rear, as it is the furthest away from the master cylinder, and that will draw more fluid through the system, which in theory will drain the master cylinder completely and flush it with new fluid, as we want to get all different parts of the brake fluid or the braking system with new fluid. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your wrench and you're just going to get it on that bleeder valve. You're going to crack it open and open it, and you'll be able to hear and see that fluid is now exiting this bleeder valve. Now we are going to let it drain, at least on our machine. Maybe slightly difficult to see, but we're going to let it drain to the W1 line, and then we're going to switch to the driver's rear, and then the passenger front, and then the driver's front. Alrighty, we have now finished draining the first caliper. As you can see, went to that W1 level, and after tightening the bleeder valve and disconnecting this, just going to show you how tight you need to do it. There isn't necessarily a torque specification, but a little more than hand tight. Not that much. Does not need to be that tight. The threads will strip out super easy. So as long as you get it tight and just go a little touch more, should be good enough to keep brake fluid from not leaking out. Now on mine, looks like this brake wire or the brake pad wear sensor is sitting in this little cover. So we're just going to tuck that back in there and put this cover back on. And after bleeding every single caliper, you're going to want to put that rubber bleeder valve cover back on just to prevent that bleeder valve from corroding, which could cause problems with future brake work. Now I'm going to repeat this process on the driver's rear, and then again the passenger front and the driver's front. So we'll fast forward when I get all of that completed. Alrighty, went ahead and wrapped up with that flush machine. I went a little past the W4, that is okay. As long as you're around that general area and the little ball in there does not stop brake fluid from going in, so you're just sucking brake fluid out and not putting new brake fluid into the system. Everything should be good to go. Just turn off your suction, wrap up your hose, and you're good to lower the vehicle to disconnect the brake fluid flush machine. So that's what we're gonna do now. Alrighty, as far as wrapping up this machine, just gonna shut off pressure to this bad boy and then just disconnect everything and reinstall that brake fluid reservoir cap, as well as making sure you release all the pressure from the machine before you do so, just so brake fluid doesn't spray everywhere. And you'll be all good to go. Pack up your fender liner and your brake fluid flush is complete. And just one more tip before we wrap up the brake fluid flush completely, is that if any brake fluid spills anywhere at all, a good combatant to brake fluid is going to be water and soapy water. Soapy water is more preferable, but normal water will work if that is all you can get to in a timely, quick manner. And just pour it on where that brake fluid leaked and everything that it touched, and that will help neutralize the corrosiveness of brake fluid, and that will help to prevent any damage that brake fluid can do if it were to get on bodywork, tires, wheels, brakes, and any of that where it could come in contact. Now let's move on to draining the oil. Now back under the vehicle. There is normally a cover that goes over where this is at. However, mine is missing, which is good to know. I'm not sure if I'm going to replace it or not, but normally there will be a cover there, and it will probably be 8 or 10 millimeter bolts. Not really sure because mine aren't there, but some sort of fastener there that will hold this cover on there for you. And to undo the drain bolt, you're going to need a 3/8 ratchet and a 17 millimeter socket. I do have a breaker bar, as it makes it a little easier to do. However, we're just going to crack this loose and undo it, and make sure you drain your oil into a oil caddy or a catch can. Try not to spill as much of that as possible. Alrighty, so I got this drain bolt most of the way loose now. So after getting your catch can lined up, as you can see, oil is starting to drain out. We're just going to pull that drain plug. Might get a little oil on your hands, and just let all that oil slowly drain out until it comes to a very slow drip. While your oil is draining, we're going to want to take the crush washer. This is the old one, this is the new one. You're going to want to take your new one and install it on there. If you use the old crush washer, it will not seal properly and cause the drain plug to leak oil. So you definitely want to make sure that you get that new crush washer on there, and it came in the Mon oil filter kit that I got for the vehicle. And now our oil is draining at a pretty slow drip, so that should be enough. Now we're just going to reinstall our new drain bolt with the new crush washer and tying it down to torque specification. I now got this bolt to hand tight and went ahead and took a little bit of parts cleaner and a rag and just cleaned up some of the remnants of the oil from the drain. But now we're going to want to torque this bolt to 25 newton meters, which is hand tight and about 1/8 of a turn with your ratchet, just an approximation. However, I'm going to be using my torque wrench just to show you how much that'll look like. Alrighty, we now got the torque wrench attached, and I got this hand tight. So we're going to put our hand right there and just show you the number as this happens. As you can see, it doesn't take too much force, and that is 25 newton meters. Between about 1/4 and 3/8 of a turn is what it took me. But again, just double check. I'm not putting too much effort into that to get that to torque all the way down. If you do over tighten it, it could cause oil leakage, so just make sure that you get it tight enough, but not too tight. Now with the car on the ground, you can see where your oil filter housing is, definitely right up front and center. Super hard to miss. So to change your oil filter now, after draining all the old engine oil, you're going to need a 36 millimeter socket along with an extension and a 3/8 ratchet, or the whatever adapters you need to get to make all that work. And now we're just going to crack this guy. So now we have this all the way undone, so we can now remove our socket. Now just a side note, some models of this vehicle, newer models, have a cap that does not have this 36 millimeter attachment on it, and you will need to purchase a specialized tool or get some really wide oil filter pliers that could damage this, but there's a specialty tool for this that'll fit around it that allows you to tighten and loosen this guy. I'm not sure exactly where to find it, but just a A shadow of warning for those of you who are working on slightly newer, I think E86 models of the BMW Z4. It does require a specialty tool for this oil filter housing. Alrighty, just fast forward a little bit, as that was pretty messy. So gonna want a rag or some sort of towel to dry up oil and lift out to place under. But you transfer it to your drain plan. This oil filter will become separate from the housing. And here's your cap. Gonna want to keep this, and we're gonna have to replace some rubber O-rings on this guy just to make everything happy. So we'll get working on that. Alrighty, we're here now. Gonna remove these O-rings. So either a flathead screwdriver, or I'm using a 90-degree pick just to get these guys off. It might be a little difficult to record this, but you just want to take your 90-degree pick, get it right on the edge. Sorry, my camera is out of focus. But you're just going to want to sneak your little pick on the inside and just kind of push it down and hook it, and then you're just going to pull it off. Now have all of those O-rings removed. So you're going to take your replacement O-rings, and you're going to take some of your new oil. You're going to dip your finger in that oil and just get all 3 of these rubber O-rings before you place them on the oil filter housing. You're going to want to make sure that they're well oiled, otherwise they could get snagged when you're installing the oil filter housing. They could either get snagged or cut, which can cause oil leakage from this oil filter housing. So just make sure you get those O-rings well oiled and should be good to go. Alrighty, we're now here and we got all the new O-rings installed. Sorry for not recording this, as it was a little difficult, but you got your main seal right there, and then you got your 2 secondary ones, which are your green ones, and everything is good to go there. And again, make sure that you lube those oil rings with some of your new oil, or it will cause leakage problems. So now we are going to take our new filter. Here it is. And we're just going to drop it in. Just like that. Boom. Kind of do it until it bottoms out in there. Now we're going to take said oil filter, and we're going to come back to the vehicle, and we're just going to install it upside down. And start it by hand, just so we don't cross thread those threads. There we go. Alrighty, and we're here, booting up our torque wrench, and it's at 25 newmeters, so just gonna tighten it down until 25 newmeters. Again, if you don't have a torque wrench, as you can see, not putting too much effort, so just cinch it down, make it a little bit tight, but not too overly tight, and you should be good to go. Alrighty, we are now ready to add oil into the motor. I'm going to add my MOA treatment, and then we're going to add that whole 5-quart container, that 6th quart, and we're going to do half of the 7th quart, as the MOA treatment is about 0.2 quarts. So that'll put us right at 6.7. And then we'll go ahead and check the dipstick and see how much more we need to add just to get it right at the tippy top. And any leftover oil we can use to top off the vehicle throughout the oil change if it needs to. Or just have spare oil for the next oil change. So let's get started. Alrighty, we are now done adding the oil. I have about a 1/4 quart left of oil after adding everything. So plenty of oil left for top off, and went ahead and checked the dipstick, and we're right a little bit above full. I did go a little over, as that oil filter is going to soak up a little bit of that oil, so just giving it a little extra. But again, if you do it right to the full mark, that's perfectly okay, or a little over or a little under, as long as it's in the range, should be good to go. Preferably not super over, as that could cause some foaming in the oil. But if it's a little over, since it's a fresh oil filter, oil gets drawn up into the oil filter housing and all that jazz. So it should end up balancing out pretty well. But now we are going to move on to doing the drive belt before we get on to resetting the maintenance light. So go ahead and raise the vehicle back up onto your jack stands, or get under the vehicle, and we'll get ready to do the drive belts. Alrighty, so to do the drive belts, getting started, we're gonna have to take off this front plastic under tray. It's all 8 mils, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 of them. So it shouldn't be too difficult getting those out with a 8mm socket and a ratchet, or a impact gun works plenty fine as well. So I'm gonna get this impact cover off, or not impact cover, get this undershield off, and start replacing the drive belts. All right, we are now here under the vehicle with no under tray. Got the under tray removed, and to detension the belts, you have 2 belts. First one is going to be your AC compressor belt, and your second one is going to be your alternator belt. So, as you can see, you have 2 of them. So for the first one, it's going to be a T60, and you're just going to slide that bad boy in there, and you're just going to pull down on it clockwise, so that way this pulley rotates down, and you're just going to slip the belt off, just like that. Now you can detension that guy. Now the belt is freely floating, and you can just pull that guy down, and there is your first belt. Just a side note, here is a flashlight on my current main drive belt, and as you can see, super duper cracked, so that is not what you want, so it's a good thing that we're getting them replaced. And if your drive belts look like that, then I'd recommend getting them replaced as soon as you can, or otherwise it will tear up and could cause some problems. But yeah, it's good that we're getting this taken care of. Went ahead and skipped ahead, but got that secondary drive belt off. The tensioner is going to be this center guy right here. And as you can see, you have a little 16mm casting in this tensioner, so you just take a 16mm socket and some sort of long ratchet or breaker bar, and you just detension it and you remove the belt. But now we're going to go over routing the new drive belt and getting it all tensioned up. So coming under the vehicle with the new drive belt, basically we're going to start at this crankshaft, and it's going to come up to this idler wheel right here and come to the alternator. Then it's going to come up and under this idler pulley, the top one, not the tensioner, and it's going to come around, I believe is your water pump, and it's going to come back up and over the tensioner. So these are going to be right super close to each other, and it's going to come back around the crank. So I'll go ahead and install that new drive belt and give you a visualization, but that's kind of how you want to set it up, and that's an explanation of doing so. All right, back under the car, got the new drive belt installed. So basically how I started is I went around the crank and then kind of wrapped it around. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but however, if you just kind of hold it straight and go around and then kind of bend one side up and over and then get it around there, then you're going to want to tension that pulley or the tensioner just so you can give yourself some clearance. It takes a little bit of finagling and a little bit of practice, and I'm sure some other videos on the internet probably explain it a little better than I do. However, as long as you keep a little bit of tension and make sure that the pulleys and wheels and components that have ribs on them means that the ribbed side of the belt rides on them, and if the tensioner pulleys, such as that pulley and that pulley right there, this guy and that guy, do not have ridges on the wheels, which means the flat side of the belt runs on them. So that kind of gives you an idea of how you're supposed to orient everything, and it takes a little practice, and again, no rush on getting it. But yeah, there is your first belt. Now let's install this secondary belt. So this secondary belt is going to be pretty self-explanatory. Just going to route it up onto the compressor and then kind of over this guy, and then just kind of get it started around the crank. Make sure that all the ribs are even in there, and that's again something that I forgot to mention on these guys. You want to make sure that all the wheels that have ribs on them are in all the way, as if you tension it and you start the motor, you risk the drive belt coming off, which could cause some certain issues, and it could cause the drive belts to break, which you wouldn't want your new drive belts that you spent money on to break. So just make sure that everything is seated and flushed perfectly. But now that we got this drive belt, secondary one, we're gonna again take our T60 and we're gonna torque it, or not torque it, tension it. Sorry, switching hands here. But we're gonna pull that guy down. And now that gives us the ability to push this drive belt up and over, just like that. I need to get it a little more seated on that crank pulley. And now, as you can see, everything is flush, and as I apply tension, everything sits nice and proper. Everything is in where it needs to go and flush. With this compressor, the belt does kind of stick out a little bit, but no worries. As long as you are in the ribs, it doesn't really slide. everything feels good. And now you're good to reinstall your under tray, and that'll be everything with the drive belt. So now we are good, and we will move on to resetting the maintenance light, and that'll be all for this video. Alrighty, now on the inside of the vehicle, here to reset your maintenance light, or not maintenance light, just your maintenance mileage. So when I turn it on and insert the key, as you can see, I have oil service 9,725. So doing this oil change plenty early before BMW says so. Even though the interval is 15,000 miles on a single oil change, never do that, please. 5,000 miles is probably good. However, this is position 1. So with the key all the way turned counterclockwise, where you can't turn it anymore and can extract it, that is your off position. And then position 1 is your first click while turning it clockwise. You'll see the little airbag light and your little digital gauge come up. However, you don't want to turn it into position 2. Position 2 is when all of your lights come on with your check engine light because the engine is not running, and your seatbelt light. You only are going to want to do position 1. So you're going to turn the key to the off position, and I'm just going to shut my door so that beep stops. That was just for example purposes. But what you're going to need to do is I'm going to see if I can prop up my camera here. Alrighty, we're back here. My apologies for the interruption, but I did some more research, and it turns out that this car will not let you reset the maintenance light if it is not reached a minimum threshold, which means I did not drive it enough before wanting to change the oil, which is very quite ironic. I don't understand why BMW would do that. However, they obviously think that their motors will run for 15k miles on a single set of oil. Despite my opinions on that consideration, just going to walk you through how to do that regardless if mine works or not. So according to my research, what should happen is, if I can get this camera angled properly, what you're going to do is you're going to hold that reset button or your odometer button, and as you can see, the little light will come on. My key is still in the off position. Then we're going to turn it to the 1 position, and the reset will appear. Then you're going to let go of that button and press it down again and hold it until that little reset starts blinking. Now, once it blinks, you'll let off, and that will reset it. However, mine is not, because it has not met the minimum threshold. But you will see that that will reset to 15,000, and then it will end. And there you go, all good to go. Sorry I can't give a great example. However, yeah, kind of dumb, but yeah, we're all good to go. And I know that my maintenance is good until 50,000 miles, so we're good. I don't really need a digital system to tell me how to do it, but give it another shot next time at 50k miles and see if that's met the minimum threshold or not. But anyway, other than that, I'd like to thank you for watching my little thrown together video about me doing all the maintenance on my BMW Z4. If you have any questions in the comments, I'd love to answer them. And if you enjoy this type of content, I'd appreciate a like and a subscription, as I, try to create, pretty good content with cool cars, and, just getting started up and experimenting with some different things. So let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, and I appreciate your watch. Have a good rest of your day. See ya.